This is Michael Popok, Legal AF, with some breaking news about the January 6th committee and its final report after 16 months of hard work, 1,000 witness interviews, and hundreds of thousands of pages. They are ready to issue their report and final recommendations. Drafts have been circulating among the committee members for the last couple of weeks. A final version is going and is with the government printing office, the GPO. Later this week. It will be brought finally, bound, and ready to be approved on the 21st of December by the committee. We expect it, based on drafts that are already circulating, to be 8 chapters, topped by a very long executive summary tying together all of the work of the overall Jan 6 committee and its 5 subcommittees. Little known fact, there are subcommittees of the Jan 6 committee, investigative teams, that are broken down by subject matter. One is a focus on Trump himself. Secondly, on the mob that attacked the Capitol. Third subcommittee of the Jan 6 committee is focused on the extremist role, the role of extremism in what happened. The fourth is focused on money transfers and the flow of money related to January 6th. And Trump's efforts to subvert the peaceful transfer of power. And lastly, the last subcommittee focuses on law enforcement's failures on Jan 6th. So we have 8 chapters. It's likely that it will mirror the 7-pronged strategy that Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson laid out as early as session number 1, hearing number 1 back in June. And it will mirror all of the efforts both before, after the election results, up to the certification and beyond, that Trump and those around him used in a misguided, unconstitutional attempt to cling to power, starting with denying the validity and legitimacy of the election even before the votes even began. The big lies started not after the election, but actually before the election, maybe even a year or two before the election, and it was originated by Roger Stone. They then carried forward the big lie and the fact that challenging the validity of the election on election eve, beyond, then filed 70 lawsuits, all of which were unsuccessful, then tried to use the Supreme Court and the Trump appointees on the Supreme Court and Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court to do their bidding. And of course, that failed. And when all of the lawsuits failed and all of the efforts to pressure Mike Pence failed, another prong of the attack, and all of the efforts to use fake electors and pressure local and state election officials, as in Georgia and Arizona and Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, when all of that failed, then their last gasp effort was the function and the efforts of a dictator, which was to whip up an angry mob and a coup and point it armed and dangerous at the Capitol and let it fly, which of course is the basis for the lawsuits, the civil lawsuits brought by elected officials and Capitol Police against Donald Trump for his role in that speech in fomenting and whipping up that mob as part of his last gasp effort to cling to power in the final days, along with his replacing or attempting to replace key members of his Department of Justice. And that is the basis of the lawsuit, that's a civil rights violation and deprivation and a violation of the KKK Act that was formed after the Reformation and Restoration process after the Civil War. So we have all of that going on in the background. Now, this Jan 6th report, which we assume will be thousands and thousands of pages, will have legislative recommendations, but I doubt it will have an actual referral, criminal referral to the Department of Justice. There's a lot of hand-wringing going on within the Jan 6 committee about whether they need to make or should make a criminal referral at this point at all. Things have changed a lot since June, July, and August. The Department of Justice has rapidly been building their case, frankly, without the cooperation of the Jan 6 Committee, who has, as we've noted in prior hot takes and on Legal AF, have withheld all of their witness statements and documents from the Department of Justice, forcing the Department of Justice to recreate the wheel in the wheel of justice in going after all of these individuals rather than just step into the shoes of the Jan 6 committee and move it forward. That is a failing of the January 6th committee, unfortunately, as they cling to their turf of producing their own report and recommendations. The downside of making a criminal referral, which has no effect whatsoever. The Department of Justice does not have to get a criminal referral from the Jan 6 committee, nor is it anything but symbolic. The downside of it is it may, in a way, undermine what Jack Smith, the new special counsel, is doing with his team of seasoned prosecutors in all the grand juries in Washington, D.C. and against Donald Trump. Because if the members of the Jan 6 committee, who are not all prosecutors, even though there's 4 lawyers on the Jan 6 committee, including Liz Cheney and Adam Schiff, they are not prosecutors. They're not working prosecutors, and they may evaluate evidence for better or worse differently than the prosecutors. They may push on one criminal count that ties the Department of Justice's hands or allows opponents to point to the Department of Justice's illegitimacy and the politicization of the Jan 6 of the Department of Justice in a way that wouldn't happen if the Jan 6 committee doesn't make a criminal referral. So they'll make that same decision, the Jan 6 committee, on December 21st at their meeting when they approve the final report that's already been printed and drafts are circulating that I've outlined. And they'll also make the decision whether it's worth it for them to make a criminal referral, or whether they should step back and let Jack Smith, the special counsel, and his band of prosecutors do their job. We'll continue to report as we get closer to the December 21st meeting of the Jan 6 committee, which will be in public and will be televised, I'm sure, on the Meidas Media Network, and their vote on whether they make a criminal referral. And of course, when we finally get our hands on the final report, hopefully not a draft that's been leaked, but the final report, we will dive into it for you and report the key components of it so that you have it as part of your arsenal in your debates with friends and family and elected officials. That's what we're here for, ladies and gentlemen, to make you more knowledgeable about the intricacies and the ins and outs of cases at the intersection of law and politics. This is Michael Popok for the Meidas Media Network and Legal AF, providing you with a breaking report on the Jan 6 committee circulating their draft of their final report against Donald Trump and all those involved with the insurrection and the attack on the Capitol and the attempt to prevent the peaceful transfer of power.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs, "It wasn't rigged, you're just a loser," at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.